July 21st, 1861. This hill that I'm standing on right now, Henry Hill. This becomes the center focal point for a major fight. First Manassas, or Bull Run, depending on which side you're fighting on. After this fight, there would be no doubt that the American Civil War is going to be a very bloody conflict. Before this fight, everyone expected it to be over with in just a few days, and that there would not be much bloodshed. But after this fight and the 5,000 casualties that are out here on this hill and the surrounding area, it becomes really clear this is going to be one of the worst wars in our history. We're here at Bull Run. We're going to take you around to some of the places.
Muted. You know, it might help if I turn my mic on. Well, there you have it, folks. At Henry Hill there in Manassas. So we went out there not too long ago, and we were just kind of setting up shop. You know, I had a concert in town to go check out, and I decided, why not? Let's go out to Manassas and let's start talking about it, because we haven't covered it a whole lot. And not only that, at the same time, we were going to be able to create something in time for Second Battle of Manassas anniversary this year, coming up here at the end of August. So I wanted to get on here and kind of go through a couple of clips that we're going to put in the video and talk to you a little bit about the Battle of Manassas, and then maybe get some feedback from you and have you talk about it as well. So if you haven't picked up this book that I've got in my hand here, this is kind of what I've used, and I'll show you what the book is here in a second. It is Manassas Battlefield Guide. Hopefully you can see that there. How's everybody's feed out there? Can you hear me and see everything good? We'll get some people in the chat room in here in a second. So if you haven't picked this book up, it's an exceptional book. This is what I use to go through the tactics and all that stuff out there at the field when I'm trying to create these videos. And it gets me to the exact location. And the best part about these books is when you go into the book and take a look, you can see the actual layout of the battlefield itself. The author, Anne McGee, I'll put her up on the screen here. McGehee, there we go. Anne McGehee, who is the author? Author is Ethan S. Rafuse. Put that right there close to the screen for you to see. That's an exceptional book. It's one of my favorites about the Battle of Manassas, and it goes through not only the second battle, but it goes through the first Battle of Manassas as well. And you can go point by point, kind of like the battlefield guides that I have with the Battle of Gettysburg. For example, in this book it said stops 1A, B, and C. And on the map, it pinpoints 1A, B, and C. And the first stop that we go to is the Brawner Farm. Now, for people that haven't been out there to Brawner Farm before, or been out to any of the farms, you know, I'm going to play a clip here in a second so that you can see the location that we're at. But you go to a parking lot, there's a nice bathroom out there in case you need to use the facilities, and then you take this long winding trail that goes out towards the farm field itself. And then the farmhouse just pops up out of nowhere. And you're kind of almost transported back in time, really, because now you're surrounded by the trees, you're in the middle of nowhere, and everything looks great. It's pronounced, oh, okay. Had it right the first time, McGee. Okay. Tim Davis, Bull Run was the first battlefield I ever walked. Lived in Prince William County for about 10 years. Thought Stonewall Monument was awesome. Still do. Howdy, Tim Davis. We'll put you up on the screen here so people can see your comment. So when you get out there to the farm, it's kind of like you're transported back in time. you know, you're surrounded by all those trees and you're in the middle of this field, and then you read this sign. And that's kind of the effect of this battlefield when you're out there. Maybe you're a newbie, you've never been out there before, you've never walked too many battlefields. You get out there and you read this sign, and it tells you about the surprise attack that Jackson has on those soldiers coming out of nowhere. So, to back it up a little bit, Lee has sent Jackson up on this flank attack, essentially. And the purpose is to catch Pope's men off guard, because Pope has been sent out there to try to um, really squash the army that's coming through that direction. And Jackson catches a flank off guard, all right, but it brings on a fight that lasts until the 30th, and it is a devastating fight. We're talking over 7,000 Confederate casualties. And for the Union side, we're talking 14,000 plus Union casualties on that battlefield. That's 2 to 1 odds there for a battle that lasts for a couple of days. Now, compared to a battle like Gettysburg, it's really not as bad, or even the battle that happens right after, not too long after, the Battle of Antietam. So you can see the casualties are starting to mount up here. So let me take you to one of our videos. Hopefully I can get this thing to pull up on the screen for you here from the farm. And that way you can kind of get an eye view of what the farm looks like.
So here we are early morning in Manassas. I'm standing and looking at the overlook out here, supposedly where Union soldiers made their movement in this direction, and General Jackson was up here on this ridge line and spotted them off in the distance, and according to his own words here on this sign, my command was advanced until it reached a commanding position near Brawner's house, which is the house here behind me. By this time it was sunset, but as the Union column appeared to be moving by with its flank exposed, I determined to attack at once. The firefight ensues out here, and as a part of it, Taliaferro and Richard Ewell are severely wounded out here on this field during this first day's fight of 2nd Manassas. So imagine, these are some, Ewell specifically is a pretty big name in the Confederate Army going forward in the future. On this field, he could have died out here. This fight was pretty tough. And when the 2 divisions advance forward, General Jackson doesn't expect the stiff resistance that he gets from the 6 regiments that are in front of him over there, but the stiff resistance he gets, and the fight is on. Even though this is a Confederate victory, it is a hard-fought, hard-won Confederate victory out here in Manassas.
Okay. So you can tell by looking at that video, you know, it is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but when you're standing at that farm and you look across the field, you can see the intersection of the road that goes down beside that battlefield, the main thoroughfare, if you will, where a lot of those soldiers would have come across that field. And let's see if I can't get this up on the screen for you here. I'm working with multiple systems, so I'm going to end up having to use the book for the maps. But as you can tell by looking here on the map, hopefully you can see that, there's a small little dot there with an arrow that goes towards it. That's where the farm was located. And you can see the troop positions all along here. Those soldiers, they're completely caught off guard, first of all. But when you go out to this field and you start to see the terrain as it's rolling down the hills and it goes up towards the backside where the Confederate soldiers are, you start to see exactly why they got so close in that position. And we're talking just mere yards apart is where these soldiers are coming into contact with each other in that field for that opening act. It's a pretty amazing thing out there. And primarily what we're doing with this video is we're basically trying to cover the positions on the field and maybe some of the markers along the way. And we're not really going to be telling the entire story of the battle itself. But we are going to be telling some highlights and some important things in this video that's coming up on YouTube on History with Waffles. Has anybody out there been to the Brawner Farm before? If you have, put it in the comments section here and tell us your experience. Maybe you've experienced something crazy out there. when I went out there just recently, there was an extremely old sign out there that talked about them recovering artifacts from the location, and they were digging down on the ground, and you could still kind of see the depression out there. But moving along, once you get through stops 1A, B, and C, you end up moving along from Brawner Farm, and it takes you over to the unfinished railroad. So I got a video clip here that we'll play for you. See, so Second Manassas was even worse in terms of casualties that played an impact to their knowledge of terrain and how to use it to their advantage. Hello, Westby. Let's see. And McGee. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. The casualty count. So Second Manassas made First Manassas look like a dance party. First Manassas casualty count was nothing compared to Second Manassas. The combined count at that first battle wasn't even close to one side's casualty count during Second Manassas. And we also got to understand, Second Manassas opens up the fight in Antietam. If the victory doesn't happen there, perhaps Antietam doesn't happen. Wes B 28 says, "Hey Waffles and everyone, hey, how you doing, Wes? Ann's not been to Manassas. Oh, you got to get up there. I don't know what you're waiting on. It's a great place." Was in there in the 90s. Charles Reynolds says he was there in the 90s. We talking early 90s or late 90s there, Charles? So the next place that we go to is we end up over at the railroad cut. Now, I don't put that in the beginning of this video. I'm going to end up putting it in closer to the end by the pattern that the national park sends you. Let's see if I can find that video for railroad cut here and put it on for you.
So I'm out on a loop trail right now near the unfinished railroad cut in Manassas. This is a place where Confederate soldiers would have been positioned in and around this railroad cut. Now, one of the rare occasions where a frontal assault with fixed bayonets during 1862 actually took place out here. Now, what you're going to see out here is that railroad cut. You see that depression in the ground. That's the unfinished railroad cut that we're talking about. And out here, I believe his name was Cuvier Grover, was ordered into a charge out here and was promised support in this location. He lined his 1,500 men up and he assaulted out here on the 29th of August. It had initial success, driving back the Confederates and causing panic amongst their troops, but he didn't receive the support he was promised and he had to fall back. This is one of those positions where you read about these textbook maneuvers, and people think that combat during the American Civil War was filled with these bayonet assaults, these bayonet charges. They simply were not, because of the rifled musket. It was almost impossible to have a bayonet assault be successful. This is one of the occasions, and it's pretty cool to come out here and see that railroad cut. This is still the depression in the ground where everything took place out here, and John Pope's men were defeated.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, if you think about walking out to a field and you've never been there before, and you're standing in the place where something like that happened, and you can actually see off in the distance the depression going down into the ground. This, now, when I was out there, I don't know if the video conveyed it or not, but this was not a small depression. And we're talking over 160 years after the battle took place. This was a huge depression in the ground. So you can imagine these soldiers are out there positioning themselves in this like a makeshift trench, if you will, and they're getting prepared for the fight. That's just the railroad cut area. Deep cut is off in the other direction, and it's even bigger than this, and it's sitting up on a hill. And we'll get there here in just a second. Let's see. Take a look at some of the comments coming in here. Jeffrey Lang is in the house. Have been to Brawner Farm many times, most recently 3 weeks ago. He loses a leg there. Well, yeah. It's striking how close the battle lines were. No, it absolutely is. And unfortunately, out there, the small signs that used to be up to kind of put you in the position of where these people were and how close they were, they are destroyed. I don't know what the national park's doing out there, but they've got signs posted up everywhere that says, if you see something, scan this code and let us know that we need to fix it. Well, if the national park's watching, and the person that I told this to at the national park, hey, there's a whole lot of signs that you guys need to go out there and replace and repair because it's missing a lot of information. And people going out there rely on that information to get them around and show them what happened. Unfortunately, the 5th New York was nearly destroyed at 2nd Manassas. They lost over 300 men with over 100 killed. That came from West B 28. Josh H. Enjoying the video, watching from Washington State. Wow, cool. Not likely that I'll be able to walk the ground anytime soon, but the Battlefield Guide looks really interesting. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting book, and if you do get out here, definitely take it out there with you. I highly recommend it. JC, great stuff waffles from the great state of Western PA. Western PA, what's up? I love Western PA. Found another Battlefield Guide about Harper's Ferry. Josh H said from South Mountain, and another one about Gettysburg. That's cool. That's a good book. And look like part of the same series. Yeah. So I've got up there somewhere, I've got a couple of guidebooks, one from Antietam, one from Gettysburg. It's made by a different author, but it's similar to what this is like here. So as we go through those steps, as we're transitioning through the battlefield, again, we're looking at another map. When you're driving out in Manassas, for those that haven't been there before, you're driving through these roads and it's meandering along. Part of it's a dirt road, and there's trees on either side. So it's really hard to determine what's left, what's right, what's up, what's down. You can't tell where the battlefield is, but it's all around you. And you're going to have to use your imagination to think about the tree lines being cleared out in some areas and this railroad cut running all the way down and then up on a hillside where you can see as far as the eye can see. And this map really clears it up for you because it shows the two lines opposing each other going in this angle. And that's how you know where the Union soldiers are sweeping up towards that Confederate position. Where, by the way, artillery for the Confederates is really winning the day. They're positioned in a real good spot, and it's really kicking the crap out of the Union soldiers out there. And that's one of the reasons why they were positioned to win. That and good old General Longstreet ends up coming in the nick of time as well. So when you roll through the battlefield there, it takes you through that whole position, the different routes of the soldiers, and then down at the base of the deep cut is a really cool sign that's out there. Now, I don't have a video clip on here to show you, but it will be in the finished video for our channel, History with Waffles, over at YouTube. And a long time ago, a soldier with the sharpshooters was out there and positioned a wooden sign where he had actually been wounded coming over a fence. So he ends up sticking this sign up. And ever since then, somebody has taken care of it, whether it's the national park or a landowner, has continued to take care of the position itself and reconditioned another sign and posted up there on the wooden fence post so that when you walk out there, you can see the actual position where that soldier put his own marker. So that's kind of a neat touch to the field. Then we go into Groveton. So Groveton's just a crossroads now. There's nothing much there. There is an old house, and I'll get into a video here and show you this home. It's out there on the edge of Groveton.
Now, wayside stop out here is the widow Lucinda Dogan's house, which was one of the only surviving houses out here in the little street corner town of Groveton. During the American Civil War, it was pretty much destroyed, and it was really her, I guess, second home, because a home that she had before that had burned down. Well, during the battle out here, this house was severely damaged by fire from Federal soldiers and Confederate soldiers. So this is a pretty neat, I guess, rebuilt or kept up structure out here at the crossroads where Groveton was. This was a community out here in this crossroads. After the war was over with, Lucinda decided that she was going to apply to have herself compensated for the destruction of her property by the federal soldiers out here, but was denied swiftly compensation for that.
Yeah, so denied compensation for the destruction of property. I'll touch on that a little bit. A lot of the fields that I go to, there are some signs that mention that. Very few of them, though, will have signs talking about the civilian casualty rate or the civilian loss, if you will, of the property. And in a lot of those battlefields, particularly in the South, soldiers would go through, destroy property, burn down houses, or accidentally blow a house up, or eat the livestock and destroy the crops. And when this was all over with, the people in the public who were civilians and not fighters were told to put in these requisitions to claim damages for the war. Well, there were tons of requisitions that were put in for property damage and loss, but very few were ever paid full outright. The property losses in Gettysburg, for example, they were partially paid. Some of them weren't even paid at all. The property losses in Manassas, pretty much all of them were not compensated. North Carolina, at the end of the war, there were people there that lost just about everything, even for the surrender. And when they applied for the compensation, even after they had been promised by General Sherman that they were going to be compensated for the livestock and everything that were being taken from them, nothing was happening. Nothing was compensated. And the excuse for that was they found out that they had a relative that was in the Confederate Army. So they completely shut it down. Your relative was in the Confederate Army. Sorry for your luck. You don't get compensation even though you weren't a combatant. So that's how that turned out. So let's go back to the great stuff waffles from JC. Found another battlefield guide about Hartford. Okay, and Ann McGee. I have never understood why so many who applied were turned down. Yeah, I've never understood it either. But I mean, at the same time, look at the population and how many people were hungry and hurting and all of that stuff too. I mean, it's a government completely overloaded by the debts of war, and we're talking about entire states are just wiped out for crops and all kinds of stuff. And so these people are lining up in lines, food lines, for example, trying to get bread, trying to get things like that. And in order for some of those people to get bread, they have to take an oath of allegiance right there on the spot. And so that's kind of a driving force for the Union soldiers to get these civilians, these citizens, to actually take that oath of allegiance too. So as we get over from Groveton, and in Groveton area, there has a pretty neat cemetery that's up on a hill that you can visit as well. We move along from there, and the reason why that place is important is because of the thought of Kearney. They were thinking that the Confederates were retreating, and they wanted to push up into that area, and they were reporting this information back. But Lee got information from Longstreet and decided he was going to push Longstreet's command forward. And what it causes is complete and total chaos for the Union soldiers. But then we end up going to Buck Hill for the next stop. Now, Buck Hill is this huge hill that's right behind the Stone House or the tavern. Some people call it the tavern. At the time of the Battle of Manassas, it really wasn't a tavern. But it's positioned so far behind it. But when you get up to the top of Buck Hill, you can literally look down from Buck Hill and you can see pretty much all of the major points of the First Battle of Manassas, and you can see how the roads intersect there. It's pretty cool. So we'll take you to a video. Hello, Todd W. from Hillsborough, North Carolina. My North Kakalaki people are in the house. So let's see. Media assets. You're going to go to...
It's not really a monument out here, but more of a house. The Stone House is a field hospital during the American Civil War, and it has many things inside of it that indicates the wear and tear of a field hospital, including carvings by soldiers that were in here being worked on. The exterior has some interesting things, looking like a cannonball and a piece of artillery shell stuck in the side. I suspect that that was a tourist attraction back in the day that was put in the side of that house and not actually stuck there from battle itself. So it's pretty neat though to see. You can come out here and check it out, and like I said, I'm doing a lot of videos of these places so that you can see a little bit closer what it looks like if you're not able to make it out here to Manassas.
It looks like we freaked out on our video there for a second. I'm gonna have to change that in the future. Yeah, so that house is really neat. If you ever get a chance to get inside of it, it's really neat to check out too. Unless you got bread, right? Like Richmond. Yeah, bread riots in Richmond for sure. That was pretty bad. Buckeye Ranger. Gov didn't reimburse expenses from Revolution. Lewis and Clark, War of 1812 vets, continues to the present. That's a good point. Although you still do have to wonder why it is that these citizens that had nothing to do with this stuff, well, in some ways they did, but citizens that aren't combatants, why they weren't compensated if they're going to be brought back into the fold. Especially Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I mean, those people up there had nothing to do with that. So Buck Hill's this huge hill like we were talking about, and in Stonehouse, when you walk around the exterior of it, you're kind of overcome with the beauty of it. I mean, the house is magnificent. It's this wonderful place. And you can see the wear and tear of history on it on the outside. And then if you get into the inside, especially going up on the second level there, you get to see the carvings, if you're lucky enough. But the house was used as a field hospital there, and the position, if you think of the old Battle of Manassas, the first one, where the soldiers are coming up over the hill and down the turnpike, and now you're talking about a different direction that the Confederates are coming from. They're no longer with their back on Henry Hill. They are now facing this direction and headed towards the Union soldiers. And also from the Springs, headed kind of in this direction. So you're looking at a wraparound kind of motion there along towards the Chin Ridge area too. So that's a very cool location out there. And that's stops 4, A, B, and C. And then we get to Deep Cut. Now, I don't know why this book runs through the things like that. I suspect it's because they want you to go through the battle sequence the proper way, which is pretty cool. But if you're driving on the field roads itself, I find it best just to follow what the national park has put up out there, because they give you point by point with signs, and you can go out there and see it for yourself. And American Battlefield Trust has an application that you can use to take you out there and give you videos, and you'll see Gary Edelman's lovely face, overly excited, telling you stories about the Battle of Manassas. So it's pretty cool. One of my favorite videos is actually on that app, where he sticks his feet in the water and talks about the soldiers as they were crossing the water, trying to scoop up water in the Battle of First Manassas to quench their thirst. So that's pretty cool. So we're moving right along here, and we're going to go, let's see, Jeffrey Lang. I visited the 5th New York Monument. They were mauled. It's a unique area on top of Little Ridge where they were in line. Behind the monument, it's a steep hill that was covered with casualties. Indeed. Are you talking about the location also where the cannons are placed on top of the hill there, Jeffrey? Yes. So interesting story about that. That, I believe, is the location where the opening sequence of the Civil War Ken Burns series was filmed, where the sunrise or sunset was being filmed with the red sky and the cannons were being placed in that scene. If you look at it real closely, you can tell that was the spot. Now, in the documentary DVD series, they talk about how they were crossing over the area and they were inspired by the sun. And they could see that field and those cannons, and they decided that they were going to stop there and take the video. So it's either that location or it was over on Henry Hill. But the position on either side is pretty unique, and it definitely matches up to the video. Tim Davis says there used to be a wonderful painting by the highway at Groveton entitled Hood's Attack. You could stand there and be right in his line. Amazing. Much like rock fight painting at the cut. I don't remember or recall seeing a painting out there, Tim. I'll have to check it out and see if there's anything near there. So let me see if I can't find that video for deep cut here.
So here we are at the deep cut. And out of this location, you can see the deep cut right over there. This is where one man, Corporal John S. Slater, would write about. And he was under Colonel Elijah G. Marshall, the 13th New York Infantry, the Rochester Regiment. And he had this to say about it. The rebel infantry poured in their volleys, and we were scarcely a dozen feet from the muzzles of their muskets. Oh, it was terrible. For 20 minutes, the shattered regiments held the slope swept by a hurricane of death, and each minute seemed like 20 hours long. For 20 minutes, the bullets hummed like swarming bees, and then those yet alive and able to do so received orders to fall back. We who fell, the dead, dying, and the disabled, held the field. Let's think about that. We who fell. So he's saying he was amongst the people that fell. This deep cut, right here, you can see the slope as it goes down, this railroad cut. This was what the Confederates were using. And that massive hill right down there is what the Union soldiers had to come up and face the Confederates up here in this location. This is pretty amazing. When you're walking these trails out here, there's a lot of them. There's signs that point the way to different portions of the trails. The Brawner Farm, which we took you to earlier, is right over in that direction. It's a long ways. If you actually look off in the clearing over there, that clearing in the distance is where we were when we were talking about that Confederate soldier. The Confederate artillery is just past the tree lines over there, firing off in this direction too. And out here we're talking about Stonewall Jackson and his men. Longstreet comes in at a later time after the fight's already started, and he's positioned way off in the distance over there, taking up that right flank position. This is an amazing place to reflect on the sacrifices out here at Manassas.
It is absolutely an amazing place. The first time I went to Manassas and saw that monument on the hill and parked in the parking lot, I was lazy. I didn't climb that hill. And I really wasn't sure that there was a trail out there to get to that portion of the battlefield and actually see that monument. But then I got out there for the very first time and realized what I missed that very first time I went to the field, looking down that hill and looking at what sacrifice it took to approach that fight. And to think about the men that crossed that field and had the nerve to go up against something like that, not knowing whether or not they were going to succeed or push their enemy off the field or what have you. They just continued to push forward and continue to fight. And a lot of guys ran, naturally. But to think about that, you know, when I go to these battlefields, I think to myself, these people, they sacrificed a lot. And thankfully, those sacrifices are probably why we're all able to do the things that we're able to do today. You know, the Constitution was the big topic of the day. It was being used on both sides to highlight the reasons why one should go to war for whatever reason. But the Constitution was the thing that is still continuing to be practiced today and continuing to be preserved and saved by those that continue to serve it. So it's pretty amazing to stand there. I still get goosebumps right now thinking about just a while back when I was standing there looking down that hill and seeing the distance that they had to cover to get to that deep cut. Something else. So that was stop 5. And again, wonderful map in this book that goes along with stop 5. You can see Porter's attack here going up into the deep cut. And you can see the Confederates' position there. Pretty decent position for the Confederates to be in. And look at the artillery there off to that, I think that's your left-hand side. But look at the artillery facing towards the flank of the Union soldiers that were coming up that hill. That's some pretty amazing stuff. West B, it's been many years since I went to Manassas. Let's show this on the screen. And I have no excuse. I spent most of my time in Gettysburg. Time for a trip back there. Yeah. I mean, make the trip if you can, you know. And if you can't make the trip, come check it out on History with Waffles and watch the videos. That's what I put them on here for, you know. I put them on here not only to educate people, but I put them on here because there's a lot of people that can't get out to these fields, can't make the trip. Maybe they live in Washington or overseas, and you know, or maybe they're disabled and they can't get up those hills. So we take them out there, and thankfully I'm able to walk up those hills, and we put those videos out there for you to enjoy. You're so right, that hill is quite steep. Yeah, it is pretty steep. So moving right along from deep cut. Now, one thing I've always noticed about Civil War battlefields, there are 2 states that you're going to see on pretty much every battlefield, and that is New York and Pennsylvania. They made sure that they marked their territory. So we have New York Avenue is where we're going to next. And New York Avenue, that fight, I don't know. There's not too many things to compare to the ambush that happened there, especially with the Zouaves. And I got something cool for you to see here in just a second when it comes to the Zouaves. Well, let's just go ahead and play that video for New York Avenue.
So why would New York go to all the trouble to putting all these monuments over here at this one location? Well, the sign out front there tells a story about how the Zouaves were here, thinking that the fight was pretty much going to be over with and it wasn't that big of a deal. And they could hear firing about a mile and a half down the road over there, and then all of a sudden the firing stopped. It got silent. Then skirmishers come running out of the woods, Zouave skirmishers right up this hill, screaming and yelling, "Run for your lives." Confederates had hit the skirmishers over there from Longstreet's corps, and they were pushing them back rapidly. The Zouaves were posted up here on this hill, and as they were hit, they were being shot running down the hill, going in that direction. One Texas soldier actually described the fields in front of me here as looking like a field of wildflowers from all the dead and dying Zouaves that they left on the ground. And you can see that that is a downhill slope there. So imagine all those Zouaves with their red uniforms just littered all over the ground. It's a pretty amazing thing to think about out here in this field of fire at Manassas.
Extremely amazing looking at the downhill slope. This is a nice little cartoon figure, if you will, of a Zouave soldier. That's what we talk about when we say red soldiers, red legs. And not all of them were dressed like that, especially later in the war. They were different uniforms, different color uniforms. Some of them had blue pants, for example. But these soldiers are being pushed back. And the reason for it is because Lee hears of Porter's failed attack. He hears of the stall. Then they basically are sharks. They can sense the blood in the water. And it's time to press the attack on the other end. And so you have that situation that happens there with the Zouaves. Now, I said I had something pretty cool for you to see here in a second. And first I'll show you the case, and then I'll take it out of the case and show you one. But here are some buttons from a Zouave uniform. Pretty neat there, huh? Let me take it out of the case. So I've never had anything from a Zouave uniform before, and I end up coming across these in a antiques dealer, so I snatched them up naturally for my private collection. If I can never get this case open. But look at this real neat button here. So they had these round, distinct buttons on some of the uniforms, and then of course the colorful sashes. And if you really want to see a real good Zouave uniform up close and personal, go to Fredericksburg. The National Military Park, or the battlefield there, has one in a case in the museum, and you can walk all the way around the uniform and actually inspect it. Take a look at it for yourself, front to back, and so on and so forth. It's a really distinct and unique uniform, and these guys were proud of wearing it. It was kind of like those Birdan sharpshooters. They were extremely proud of wearing their uniforms too. They wore green uniforms, and they had those black button, rubberized buttons, or coated buttons, so that they could stop the reflection of the sun going off those buttons. But those were pretty neat uniforms too. If you look at the American Civil War uniforms as a whole, there's a whole lot of different uniforms that were used throughout the American Civil War, which kind of makes you wonder why stuff wasn't standardized. Cool buttons. Thanks, Josh. Tim Davis. Shame the painting is no longer there. It must be in someone's private collection. Maybe. It certainly can be debated that Second Manassas was Lee's most impressive victory. It could be, but I'm still of the belief that Chancellorsville is the most impressive victory when it comes to Lee himself. And of course, that's with the help of Jackson. But splitting your army in two like that, and surprising them from one end and hitting them in the mouth, that's pretty neat, especially when you consider the sizes of the armies there. But definitely, this was an impressive victory for that commander as well, considering how things were going. I mean, technically, if you look at the Peninsula campaign, the Peninsula campaign wasn't really a Confederate victory. It was one fight after another that defended Richmond and kept that big army from taking over Richmond. But it was kind of McClellan's fault. McClellan had the men, the material. McClellan had the ability. McClellan got in the way of McClellan. So the Peninsula campaign was kind of like a series of battles that really kind of failed. But this was one huge victory for the Confederacy. And you can see why now they're thinking they've got the gumption, if you will, to make that next step and end up in Antietam, end up in Maryland. I agree about Chancellorsville. Absolutely. That was one heck of a fight out there at Chancellorsville. Now, speaking of items, we talk about ending up in private collections. I have a video over on my YouTube channel, History with Waffles. And in that video, we talk about a headstone to a soldier out there at that field in Manassas. And this headstone ended up in someone's garage and eventually made its way back to the national park. The national park took possession of it, and the family, the relatives of that person, requested that the national park put the headstone back in place. So for a long time, because it was under federal tape, red tape, it wasn't allowed to be put back in place. Well, the headstone is on display now in the national park. You can go see it for yourself. And the grave is now marked with a different headstone. So the original headstone still never made its way back to the grave in Manassas. And even today, when you talk about that field out there, this is why American Battlefield Trust is so extremely important. Even today, people are threatening hundreds of acres of land out there that could potentially have Union soldiers buried on that land, even Confederate soldiers buried on that land. And today they are still threatening that land. They're still trying to gobble up that land for solar farms and development. On top of all that, it wasn't that long ago that they did actually find remains out there in those fields. I mean, they're still finding Confederate and Union remains on these battlefields all the time. Williamsburg, across the James River here, they found 3 soldiers buried underneath one of the tourist attractions in Williamsburg when they were doing a restoration out there. And they handled it with care, and they have all of those artifacts that came out of the grave, and they're going to be reburying those soldiers. But just think about that. How long ago did they rebuild Williamsburg during Rockefeller's age? I mean, it's amazing. You're still walking across these graves, and we have no idea because they were just buried in random places. Tends to get neglected. Terry Downs, yes. Yes, it does get neglected. Absolutely. People don't talk about it enough. Second Manassas is kind of like this thing that just poof disappears in the mind of historians, and unless you're Ed Bears. Ed Bears talked a lot about it. God rest his soul. All right, moving along. The driving tour goes on to Chin Ridge. Chin Ridge is in the middle of nowhere on that battlefield, and there's a couple of markers out there, and then there are some. You can see where houses used to be, and there is an actual graveyard that's out there where a Revolutionary War soldier is buried. And I'll take you to Chin Ridge here in just a second.
So the position I'm at out here right now to go to this rock is a spot where Colonel Fletcher Webster fell. And Fletcher Webster fell mortally wounded here on Chin Ridge, and he was the son of a famous orator, Daniel Webster. One of the soldiers from Virginia came by and found him and asked him if he needed some water. He offered him water, and he gladly took the water from the soldier. He then handed that Confederate soldier his wallet and asked him if he would please return that wallet home to his family. This soldier from the 8th Virginia, after the end of the war, he survived the war, and he did him that favor. He returned that wallet back home to his family. It's a pretty amazing thing. It's one of those stories that continues to survive itself through the war, and you would think that at the very beginning of the war, 1862, a man who was able to come across this man and take his wallet from him and give it back to his family, no way that's possible, but it did happen.
That was a pretty amazing story to me. That's why we added that to the video, and we wanted to cover that. Thinking about 1862 and even 1861, temper was high. They had already been into this war a year. It was July of 1861 when the first battle happens, and then in August we have that second battle take place. These people are not liking each other anymore. They're not having this grand idea of this gentleman's war, if you will. It's now blood, guts, and glory. These people are fighting each other tooth and nail, and they're killing each other left and right. And this man's laying on the field, and he looks at his enemy, and he hands him the one thing that he finds super important and wants to have it returned to his family. And for some reason, something in his heart tells him he doesn't have to fear giving this to this man, that this man is going to return it to his family. And that soldier does. He takes it back to his family. And I thought to myself, you know, would people do that today? Is that something that we would see happening today? Probably not. It's pretty amazing the way these people conducted themselves during this battle, during the war, really. So Chin Ridge, you go along there and you see the positions out there, and if you're not real familiar with the territory, the signs that are posted, they'll have some signs that say First Manassas, then they'll have some signs that say Second Manassas, and it can be a little bit confusing as you're going out to the battlefield. Um, there are a couple of things along Chin Ridge, and it's a very long walking path, but it's paved. So if you don't like getting out there and getting dirty, you can just walk on the pavement and take your way all the way down to Chin Ridge. But I like that location. It's pretty secluded. You get to go out there and kind of be in your own little history bubble and think about what happened out there. So then once we move on from Chin Ridge and they're talking about that Confederate high tide, that point of the battle at Henry Hill and how everything is starting to unfold there, and then Pope's men are going to have to retreat eventually. And they're going to end up going back to their defenses. And they're going to end up covering Washington, D.C. because now it's looking more and more like this Confederate army is going to roll right over top of them. So that's where I end up. I end up going back to Henry Hill, talking about the family that was out there, and the older lady that died during the first battle, and then talking about the placement of the monument out there. I'll see if I can't find that video clip here for you. I think this is it.
Now, when we talk about memorials on the American Civil War battlefields, like the one right here behind me, we're generally talking about memorials placed 10.
What happened there? Let's try this again.
Now, when we talk about memorials on the American Civil War battlefields, like the one right here behind me, we're generally talking about memorials placed 10 to 50 years later. Older soldiers are coming back to the fields, remembering where they were during the time of battle and placing a monument there to memorialize the people that died, or to, in the sense of Gettysburg, mark the place where they were so that they can memorialize the fight there. It was more about honoring the struggle at that time than it was about honoring the actual dead on some of those fields. This is one of the earliest memorials to any soldier on any battlefield in the American Civil War. June 11th, 1865. Soldiers from the American Civil War, Union soldiers, would be pictured in front of this monument, and it was placed here on this hill. Oddly enough, guess where they knew to place it? The ruin. Now, when we talk.
Oh, so there we go. So you have that monument placed there. You also have that monument over a deep cut. Those two are some of the oldest monuments placed on any battlefield in any American Civil War battlefield or location. Also, right up the hill from there is another monument that was placed that is missing. And it was placed out before that monument was placed, and it was for a Confederate soldier. And it used to be this cylinder that was in the ground. The only thing that's there now is a base for that cylinder, and it's kind of wedged in between a tree. It's pretty neat to see that over there too. And we're going to have that in this video as well. Let's go back to the comments and see what everybody's saying. Let's see, teardowns. Many years ago, I attended soccer school at the community college out there. Can't help but wonder if there was any battlefield ground on that campus. I'm sure there was. I mean, you go to Gettysburg, for example, the Gettysburg High School is sitting right on top of a major portion of the first day's battles out there at the Battle of Gettysburg. Jeffrey Lang, by the way, the Bull Run Winery is a good place to refresh your electrolytes. They have amazing relics inside. Your electrolytes, huh? Is that what we're refreshing? Very cool. That's good to know. So we end up rolling over from Henry Hill, and we end up going down to the bridge every time when we get there. And when you say the bridge in Manassas, everybody knows what you're talking about. It's that beautifully rebuilt bridge that was destroyed during that battle, the first battle, and the Bull Run actually goes through that location out there. That hiking trail out there is pretty historic too. If you take it and you go through that area, you'll see some of the most important places of that first Battle of Bull Run out there on that hiking trail too. Hydration is important. Hydration is extremely important, but I wouldn't put any of that stuff in your camel bag. Yeah, trust me. So let's go ahead and go to that bridge here.
Well, here it is. This is the bridge in Manassas. When everybody thinks of Manassas, they think of this bridge right here, which has a lot of pictures taken of it after the destruction that happened in here during the first Battle of Bull Run, and even some of the destruction of the second Battle of Bull Run. This is the location that everybody thinks about. Bull Run, right behind me there. To me, this stands as a monument to the men on both sides that fought out here, and to the people of the town and surrounding area here that were a part of this community at one of the most tumultuous moments in our nation's history, the American Civil War. It is a tribute all to itself, and the fact that they are preserving this area and making it a hiking trail so that people can go across and see it for themselves is pretty amazing. It's a beautiful and peaceful place out here in Manassas. I hope you've enjoyed our video out here of all the spots that we can get out to see in a quick couple of hours and piece together for you here on YouTube. We got some more videos coming up here soon, so stay tuned and subscribe and like, and keep hitting that like button because that builds up our channel and keeps us going. Till next time, this is History with Waffles.
Yes, indeed. Keep hitting that like button, that thumbs up. That definitely builds up the channel. And whenever you place comments on there, hey, if you don't even like the video, you can go in there and tell me my video sucks. I'm totally cool with it. I'll take any criticism you have for me. I have a lot of people that get on there all the time and tell me, hey, you got that fact wrong, buddy. And I'm like, cool, thanks for letting me know. When I first started making these videos, people were telling me the music was off or um, that I needed to adjust things. And I made some adjustments. My videos got better because people told me about it. And those comments actually help your channel grow. So I appreciate every one of you that go on there and hit the thumbs up and comment and all that good stuff. And YouTube's not like they blast out the video to a million people and they get to see it. It's all based on a train effect. When that train's going down the tracks, is that train going to continue to pick up speed? And if it doesn't pick up speed, they put the brakes on. And then that's it. That video stops getting plays, which means even if you had an exceptional video with a lot of great information in it, people are not going to see it. And that's what this is all about. It's about education. It's about getting people to see these videos that they might want to get to see. Well, that was the end of the tour there. Like I said in that video, I went out there and blasted through that stuff in just a couple of hours in Manassas. I did a little bit early in the morning one day, and I had the old hat on here, and then I put the old Tennessee Volunteers hat on and did the rest of it in just a couple of hours. You can roll through that town and check out that battlefield for yourself in that amount of time if you want to. But I suggest if you've never been to Manassas, that you go out there and take your time that first time and actually enjoy it. Because who knows when you're going to come back. The first time I went to Manassas, it was 3 years before I got back out there, and I only lived like 3.5, 4 hours away. That's pretty amazing amount of time before you get to go back to a battlefield. So take your time. And this book, I can't praise this book enough when it comes to that battlefield. Manassas, a battlefield guide, Ethan S. Refuse. And I'll put that information in the YouTube video description so that you can actually see the title and the correct spelling of the author if you want to purchase it yourself. That book is available in the visitor center at the National Battlefield there in Manassas. It's an excellent book. It takes you step by step, location to location. If you don't want to do second Manassas that first day and you only want to do the first Manassas, that's only a few pages in this book. And it'll take you step by step to important locations for first Manassas as well. Let's go back to the comment section. Man, there's a lot of comments here. This has been fantastic. Thanks for taking so long. You better believe it there, Trouble. Any criticism? Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elder. Okay, I'm putting that up. Hang on. Oh, funny, funny, funny. Excellent discussion, Buckeye Ranger. Thanks a lot, Buckeye Ranger. Great stuff, Todd W. I appreciate that. And McGee, this will be excellent. Yep, it will be excellent. The only problem is I got to figure out when I'm going to upload it. Normally it's Saturdays at 5:30, but I'm kind of behind the curve right now, editing and putting this thing together. There's so much content to squeeze into a video that I don't want to end up doing another 2.5 hour epic. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to go about this and chop it up properly and put it out there, a nice smooth thing for everybody to see. Josh H. I found that book on Amazon. Planning on getting it soon. Hey, there you go. Probably in 24 hours. Amazon delivers quick. Hey, take your time. Your stuff is always worth waiting. Hey, I appreciate that, Terry. So, again, if you all have any questions or anything, feel free when you're in these comment sections to post a question on any video. I'll answer the questions. I'm kind of an open book when it comes to that stuff. When you go to these battlefields, remember, you don't have to be perfect going out to these battlefields and try to be like some genius historian. There's a lot of big brain people out there that write a lot of good books. and they'll look down. Some of them look down at your nose, look down their nose at you. Maybe a lot of them don't. A lot of these historians you can reach out to and talk to, and shoot them an email even, and ask them questions, and they're more than willing to answer the questions. I don't pretend to be a super high educated historian from Harvard or something like that. I'm just a guy one day that decided that he wanted to try to put together some videos and dig deep into history and do some things that he likes. Um, Going out to these fields, it's all about going there from your perspective as a person, reading about these people that lived before you, and understanding that not only was their time different, but what they thought about was different from what you think about. You have to put yourself in their shoes to understand why they did what they did. Today, a lot of us couldn't fathom some of the things that happened in those days. The voting rights, for example. Women can't vote? Are you kidding me? Minorities? I mean, come on. That's terrible. Today, we're all like, what? But back then, those people were different because of the way that they handled themselves. And that doesn't make it right. There's no excuse for that. But when you go to these fields, you have to put yourself in the shoes of those soldiers. And the primary focus here is understanding their experience while they're on those fields, and then enjoying yourself while you're out there. You don't have to take in every little thing. You just got to enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Indulge in history. That's the thing you like. Otherwise, you wouldn't be out there on that field. Well, I appreciate every one of you coming out and watching this. It's the largest live stream crowd yet for my channel. I really appreciate that. Maybe it's because I shared it with Twitter. I don't know. Or X. Sorry, X. Until next time, we'll catch you guys around out there on the field, and hope to see you anywhere out there on those fields. And if you see me, just say, "Hey, Waffles." I might have a sticker for you. You can put it on your cooler. We'll see you guys around.
Now, I couldn't think of a better place to end this video than right here in the middle of the woods, the Battle of the Wilderness, at the hotly contested Brocken Plank Road, Orange Plank Road. Not too far in that direction, Longstreet's wounded. Right here where I'm at right now is a place where men like Wadsworth and Hayes end up losing their lives. Families lose loved ones. Soldiers burn to death in these fields around me here. If you'll let these fields do it, they'll touch your soul.